Hello, everyone. This is Brad Clymer again, and I have the pleasure of visiting with Lee Atherton. Lee, how are you this afternoon?
Brad, I am fantastic, thanks.
Awesome, awesome. So tell us where you're residing from, and give us some background information if you would.
Sure, I am from Massachusetts, uh, good old New England with its crazy weather here. Um, my background is I am a, United Church of Christ minister.
Mhm.
Spent most of my time in ministry as a hospice chaplain. I'm also a fire chaplain. Uh, and in 2006, I took my first life coaching program, and over the years have brought the two together and I founded Coach Rev at the Crossroads, bringing the best of both worlds into that mix.
So your website is coachrev.com. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, good. So tell me what a fire chaplain is. You just said a word I don't know.
Oh, all right. So I'm considered a first responder. I'm a
Oh, okay.
chaplain to a couple of local fire departments here, and I offer spiritual support, chaplaincy to the responders themselves. And occasionally I will go out on a call if it's, say someone's house is burning or there's been a horrible car accident, to offer support to the victims as well.
Mm, what a calling. Holy smokes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
literally.
So obviously you're not afraid of blood. So that's awesome. So you're a professional officiant. Tell me what that means.
That means that as an ordained person, I
Right?
can officiate funerals, weddings, things of that nature. And I bring that into what I do as well. So there's a flow. As an end of life coach, meeting someone who's dying and their family and being able to carry that through as the one who might lead the person's end of life ceremony, their memorial service, and then be the grief support for his or her loved ones afterwards.
So I find it interesting that you use the word coach with end of life and hospice. Are you coaching the the individual who is passing on, or are you coaching the family? How does that dynamic work?
Usually it's the person who's dying.
Hmm.
And then if their family wants to be involved, absolutely, whether it might be a family coaching session or a individual session with any member of the family or another loved one,
Mm,
could be friends. Um, yeah.
awesome, awesome. So you went to Andover Newton Theological School.
Yes.
So that is located where? Is that
It's
is that in
in Newton,
Massachusetts? Okay,
Massachusetts, but has moved, I should say it was in Newton. It
right.
has merged with another local university
Hmm.
and is in Boston now.
Well, wonderful. So
Yeah.
obviously having a call and to me, Lee, this is a calling.
Oh, yeah.
Um, how did you gravitate towards end of death? How did you? I mean, did you? So I'm going to ask you a couple of questions. How did you gravitate towards end of death? And did you know when did you first know that you had a call to the ministry or to helping people? Young girl, fill us in on
No,
both of those if you don't mind.
sure. In my late 30s, I was a church secretary. Um, got super involved in the church that I was working at, and it's a fun story. I sang in the choir. We sang this anthem, Here I Am, Lord,
Right?
for our pastor's installation.
Mm-hmm.
Love it.
Mm-hmm.
Sang it lots of times as we rehearsed for that. But that day when we sang it for the installation, I couldn't sing. It was just an overwhelming sense that those words were my words.
Mm. I can
And
tell. I can tell now that it still affects you.
it does.
That's actually the presence of God there. That's exactly what that is. That's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah. It's so powerful, so profound a moment. Um, At the time, I thought it was just calling me to working in a bigger organization or bigger religious organization, until I gave my notice to the Board of Deacons. And one gentleman jumped up and ran over and gave me a hug and said, "I am so glad you're finally going to seminary. You're going to make a great minister." And I said, "What?"
You're like, wait a minute. Oh,
Yeah. Um,
what?
yeah, yeah. So well, other people affirmed that, and as they say, the rest is history.
So you were 39. You were a church secretary. Had you had a career prior to that? Was being a secretary your career? If you don't want
Yeah,
to, if you want to share a little bit about how you got to that point, that would be great as well. The crowd loves stories. Stories say so much
right.
more than just facts sometimes.
Yeah. So a message I got growing up was that the best I'd do was to be a secretary. So that's where I went, and I was determined to be the world's best secretary.
So
And
okay,
get
time out. The message that you got from whom?
from my mom.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
Um, Took this job as a secretary when my children were young. Couldn't be a stay-at-home mom anymore, and was offered this, jumped in, um, and the pastor and I started within a day of each other. It was kind of an interesting journey.
Wow.
Two newbies. Um, he is the one who told me, "You can be and do anything you want."
Mm, yeah.
Uh, in fact, my given name at birth was Nancy.
Mm,
And while I was in seminary, changed my name. A gift from God, I call it,
right.
but
Right.
Lee is that pastor's name,
Mm,
and meaningful because he was so instrumental in changing my life in a
wow.
lot of
Wow.
ways.
You know what they don't tell us when we're coming out of high school or coming out of college, that you will reinvent at least 2 or 3 times. They don't fill us in on that class, do they? They
No,
should
they
have a
don't.
class called Reinventing 101. You won't need this till you turn 40 or 50, but it's there
It
nonetheless.
is.
Yeah. Well, thank you for
Very
sharing
true.
that.
Yeah.
Anything else along the storyline that you'd like to fill us in on?
Sure. You asked about hospice.
Yes.
When I was in seminary, I had no inclination to deal with end of life, but
Mm-hmm.
had a friend that I had met who knew very early on that she was called to hospice ministry, who kept saying, "Do it, you'd be great." And no, no, no.
Right.
We had both graduated. I was in between jobs. She needed someone to cover a 2-month leave from her hospice position. And she said, "You can at least do that, can't you?" I
Mm-hmm.
fell in love. It's amazing to me
Mm-hmm.
and fulfilling. People let us who do this work into their lives, not knowing us, and it's a huge moment for them. They're
Yes, it
sharing their
is.
deepest selves.
It is. Can I share a quick story before we move into the business side of things?
I would love.
Um, my sister died in 2006, and then my mom died in 2007. When 66 days later, I watched my dad will himself to die, which he did. He was in the grave in 66 days. And I remember a lady named Sharon Williams from Hospice who called and said she had a Texas draw. I was living in Texas at the time, and she said, "Brad, it looks like you've had a lot of grief. Would you like to come in and talk?" And I got to tell you, that brought such a healing to me that
Mm,
it went on for probably a year. And I would go in, I don't know, once every 2 weeks maybe, and just we'd sit there and counsel for about an hour at a time. And it brought a real closure. So when I lost my fiance in 2016, unexpectedly, I had some of those coping tools still that I could use towards moving forward. So
mm.
what you do is very powerful, and I am thankful that you're there. Thanks for being on the front lines, because you
Thank
are.
you. Thank you.
So, well, let's move on. What is a living will, and what do you offer that is different?
Yeah, so most people think of a living will as choosing your healthcare proxy, uh, implementing a DNR if that's something you want.
DNR
Uh,
being do not resuscitate, right?
do not resuscitate.
Right.
Yep. I do a lot of work with people to plan for their end of life so that they can live their dying. And that includes planning that living will, but also what else do you want at the end of life? Um, what do you want your physical place to be like? What do you want family members to know? Um, what conversations do you want to have?
Mm,
What's your level of pain that you are
mm,
comfortable with? And an interesting piece that I've discovered along the way is a lot of Roman Catholic people will say, I have to I have to suffer through the pain. Don't give me
mm,
any pain medication at all,
mm,
because they feel they need to follow what the suffering of Jesus.
mhm,
To other people who say, I don't want any pain whatsoever. So even if that means that I'm not able to communicate with my family, give me meds. And there are a lot of different pieces um, that most people don't think about. What are your spiritual wishes? Do you want to be surrounded by um, your favorite spiritual music? Do you want someone to come in and bless you from your faith tradition? So it's a much broader topic than just the medical choices.
right.
And even the medical, there's a lot involved, not just CPR or not, but there's a lot in between. Do you want CPR under this condition? Maybe, but maybe not under that condition.
Right.
Uh, and I help people discover their answers to those questions through looking at their values, their morals, what's important
Mm.
to them as unique individuals, not a one size fits all.
It doesn't sound like it. So values, fill me in on that. Values and morals, you said. Fill me in on that a little bit.
Yeah, so people who value family
Mm,
uh, are going to lean more toward their family being involved in most aspects of their dying. Um, Another who is more of a solo kind of person, a loner.
yeah, yeah.
He calls himself, I'm thinking of someone in particular,
Mm,
I'm happy if I die all by myself.
mm.
Uh, the one I mentioned about pain, your religious value, and how does that um, influence or inform your decision?
I, I would never have thought that one through. I would never have considered that at all until you said that. That's pretty interesting.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, there's a neat quote that I use. There's a workshop I do on this.
Mm-hmm.
We're not only given the body, but we're given the ability to see beyond the body and to realize that we are not tied to it forever.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so, what does that mean to each person?
Mm.
Um, does your understanding include life after death? And how does that impact how you might die?
Right.
What you wish your dying to be like? Lots of deep subjects. And there's also a couple of silly things that you can add to your living will
Okay.
in
Okay.
terms of this. I use as a foundation a document called the Five Wishes, and
Yeah,
that's
I
a
see that.
legal document.
That was
Um,
my next question. In fact, we can roll on into that if you want to.
oh, sure. Five Wishes is a document that is legal in almost all states and has become legal in many places internationally as well. And it includes the um, spiritual wishes, the physical wishes. you can write in. And I have on mine. So I love physical touch.
Mm-hmm.
I find it very comforting and grounding.
Mm-hmm.
And I have in there, but don't you dare rub my arm. I hate that.
Now wait a minute.
That's why I say
You
that.
like you like physical touch, but don't touch your arm.
You can touch it, don't rub it. So little things.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah, yeah. What do you want your family to know? I've had people include things as simple as, I want you to always remember I love you, to
Mm,
big, long dictums.
mm.
These were all the things I want you to know about me, my life. Um, People have included their funeral liturgy in
Wow.
this document as well.
So does it have concrete questions, or is it just 5 things that you would like to have, or 5
It
things that are
does,
important to you?
yeah, it does have concrete questions. Who do you want to make your healthcare decisions?
Mm,
And then part of the conversation in that one is, who do you want to choose? Why do you want to choose that person? And a lot of us come up with a name of someone, but then to think through, is that someone able to do this for you? Is
right.
it someone who will be courageous enough to follow through on your wishes that
Mm.
may not be theirs? Uh,
Now that's a strong point right there, because there's some, it seems to be so much peer pressure during these times. There's desires from all the family members, and to supersede those and stay with, and to stay what the person dying wants. It's a great
right.
point.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, it's not an easy time. It's stressful on all sides, isn't it?
Isn't it?
Yeah.
It is. It is. And if I, in my humble little way, can make that an easier process for someone or
Mm,
less stressful, um, that
mm,
that is my hope, to do that for people.
mm. Wow.
The second question is the kind of medical care I want or don't want. Um, the third is how comfortable I want to be. Again, the pain medications. But beyond that, what's comfortable for you? Think of when you're sick with the flu. Where do you want to be? Um, a lot of us want to be just in our bed, wrapped up in our comfortable covers with our favorite pillow. Do you want to see the sun shining in though, or do you want it dark?
Mm.
What's
Well,
your
that's a good
preference?
point. I never thought of that. Yeah.
Yep, yep. Dignity comes into it. Uh, Thinking of your caregivers. Uh, to what extent do you want your caregivers to be your loved ones or professional people? Thinking about, often as we're older, it's our children who are taking care of us.
Right.
How do you feel about your child changing your diaper? And that's going to
Mm,
make a difference on what you choose for where you are, whether or not you have hospice, whether or not you're in or out of a hospital or a long-term facility. Um, Things like that. How do I want people to treat me? Right? That one of, go, excuse me. Um, Go
That is
ahead.
that is that you or me?
That's me. Let me shut that off.
You can do airplane mode. I have to think the same thing. On my last interview, I was doing I forgot to hit do not disturb, and in the middle of it, I got a text. Because on Apple products, you get all the text, but no big deal.
Right.
So you said dignity. Can you go back to that word for a minute? Tell me, because Jesus never took anybody's dignity. So share with me what that means. I mean, we have an understanding, but I think sometimes that word is a cliche or a platitude, especially in these kind of situations. I'm just curious what that definition would be.
Good point. Good point.
And I mean, you don't have to dig totally deep. I'm just curious, having an overview of that word.
Right. I think of the first people who come to mind when I think of dignity are the older folks that I often served who were in nursing homes,
Okay.
um, who were, and it's been a while since I've worked frequently in nursing homes, and there have been changes, but I picture the woman who had dementia, who was left tilted over, drooling,
Mm,
um, and her shirt just sort of hanging off of her shoulder.
yeah. Yeah.
Um, to me, that's not the dignity
No.
that's for me.
No.
So when you think of that, can inform your choices.
Hmm.
Do you want to be kept alive at all measures,
Mm, yeah.
uh, or is a dignified death something that is not surrounded with machines
Mm.
keeping you alive?
Well, so you navigate a lot of waters, don't you?
Hmm.
So probably no two cases are very close to the same at all.
That is very true.
Interesting, at the gym yesterday, I saw a gentleman, probably had to be in his late 90s, with a personal trainer, and he's
Uh-huh.
he's out doing weights. He was hunched over, but it was just wonderful to see the man at that age still in the gym. He had to be 95, 96 years old, and I had to go over and give him a fist bump. I think he's very courageous. I thought he was very courageous.
Yeah,
Um, who should be engaging in this process?
everyone. We often think about people, and I've referenced them a couple times, people at elderly people who know that, death is not too far away. But I encourage even young people. I told my kids when they were teenagers, as soon as you're an adult, you've got to go through this thinking.
Mm,
We never know when that crisis is going to happen.
mm,
A horrible car accident, and you're being rushed to the hospital, and they've got you on life support, and your
mm,
family follows in, and registrar is throwing these papers at your loved one's face. Make this decision right now. How can you?
mm-hmm,
Right?
mm-hmm.
So it's
Yeah.
not just
Mm.
uh, when you know the end is coming.
So it's
There's
interesting. So then it's not only for the elderly. Then these choices are not only for the elderly.
exactly.
Okay.
Yep.
Wow.
There's a story I share about a young man who was in a skiing accident. He skied into a tree.
Mm,
Um, was being kept alive on life support, and his siblings, his parents, his friends, what would he want? They were told that for him to live, it would be connected to these machines for the rest of his life. He would never
mm,
be able to speak. He would never be able to move. He would be conscious and aware, but couldn't do much about that. They had put him in an induced coma, and the family had the gift of the doctor offering to bring him out of the coma so they could ask him. And
wow.
they told him, this is what life would be like. Do you want that or do you not? And he shook his head. The
Mm,
tears came down his face, and they knew,
what a choice. But I can't even imagine. I can't even imagine that.
right?
Wow.
And to take that choice out of your family's hands
Mm,
when they don't know, or that decision, I should say, not necessarily the choice, when they don't know what you would want.
mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm. So then the end of life coaching helps find those answers on like let's take this young man. Let's say that that he could not be brought out of the coma. Let's say that he was in a coma. He wasn't in an induced coma.
Mhm.
Are these the kind of coaching or end of life situations that you help people get through to make that determination for this person?
I do help people in that situation.
What a tough situation to be in. Holy
Yeah,
smokes.
yeah, yeah. Um, I also help people who have been given that terminal diagnosis,
Hmm.
uh, which Medicare says has to be 6 months or less.
Mm.
Sometimes people go much
Like you
longer,
can designate that.
right? But it's to be with
Mm.
people in that ending,
Right,
um, to help them uh, explore what that last chapter will be like.
right.
Um, Maybe they have broken relationships with family members that they
Hmm.
want to resolve.
Right.
Maybe they need to share stories and don't know how. There are so many
Hmm.
topics.
Right, right.
Um, yeah, yeah.
So let me ask you, why is a chaplain or end of life coach speaking about medical choices?
That's a question I so often get in this workshop that I offer. It's because what goes into making these decisions is so much more than the medical information about
Hmm.
whether you do or you don't. And certainly, I would never take the place of a medical professional and their wisdom. Uh, I would never tell people what those pros and cons are um, from my own perspective. But once you know all those pros and cons,
Hmm.
medically speaking, how do you choose? It's still not easy, even if you know those pros and cons. So, from the spiritual standpoint, um, from the emotional
Hmm.
standpoint, all those deeper questions come into play. And without someone to um, give you the tools to ponder that, to think through that, it's not easy to make those decisions.
Hmm. So can I ask you a personal question?
Of course.
Do you have times when this affects your own personal life, especially a tough case or a hard case, that kind of a thing, where for days you're meditating and thinking about it and then, rolling it over in your head?
I have to
I
say,
don't know if that's a fair question or not, but
it,
because
it is a fair question.
I'm thinking, how do you disconnect and go back to life as normal whenever you've come through a traumatic experience, even as a coach?
Yes.
Because as coaches, we're moving people forward, but still.
Hmm. I've had a lot of training in trauma and crisis response that always has an element of how do you care for yourself. So I
Self-care,
have some
yes.
self-care that
Yeah.
that is there, which is helpful. But as crazy as this might sound, it doesn't stay with me because I feel so honored to
Wow.
walk that journey with someone. And if I can help make it different than it otherwise might have been, that joy, that gift carries me through.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. So it's truly a calling for you then.
Mhm, mhm.
Yeah. So, what kind of things should people be thinking about?
Thinking about, the tough questions, thinking about, many of the things that we talked about during
Hmm.
this time together. Think about, who you want to have the conversations with, which is another piece of the puzzle, so to speak, because we can come up with all these answers, our own choices, our own decisions, but we have to let others know. So,
Hmm.
how do you want to let others know? Who do you want to let know? Um, there are the important ones. You've got to let your healthcare proxy know what your wishes are. You've
Right.
got to let your primary care doctor know. Um, But do you want to leave it there, or do you want to have the conversation with your children so
Mm,
that they know and understand how you came to those decisions, or
mhm.
with your partner? Um, because I feel that those conversations are just as much of um, the process to making it something a person can feel comfortable with.
Right, right. Which is interesting, because I know from experience that there's people that you meet that you want them to go through treatment, and they're saying, "I'm tired. I don't want to go home." And it's frustrating me at times when they're still a relatively, quote, young person who's deciding that they just don't want to fight anymore. I guess people do get to that point, and that's an adjustment for all of the family and friends and everybody else included.
Right, right.
Mm.
So as you were saying that, I thought of one person I was with. This was a gentleman who had two children, an 18 and a 19-year-old,
Mm,
that he had been estranged from. Um, he had a wonderful Christmas, celebrated, it was all that we want Christmas to be.
mhm,
Before New Year's, he started to feel pain in his lower back. Got to the point that it was excruciating. He couldn't handle it. He went to the ER. Day before New Year's, he was diagnosed with bone cancer
mm,
and given, not long to live. So that's when he came. This was when I was a hospice chaplain. He came on our services at that time. Um, he died at the end of April. In those 4 months, my team and I had the opportunity to mend those relationships, um, to the point where they were both able, or all three, both sides able to say, I forgive you, I
mm,
love you, it's okay. Um, for him to make peace with dying at such an early age. And he had always had a dream of meeting his favorite author. And he was very upset that because he only had 4 months left, or however long it would be, he'd never be able to meet this person. Uh, we were able to make that happen.
oh, wow, wow.
So all those pieces of just healing him emotionally, giving him that gift of something he always wanted, giving his children the gift to reconnect with their dad and be okay at saying goodbye
Hmm.
once they had reconnected into this new relationship. Um, those are what make it whole.
Mm.
Those are what make it okay to walk away from such a tragic story.
Yeah, that is tragic. But but there's a silver lining in it. Let me ask you one question before and then I want you to finish up however you want. We've got about 5 minutes.
Okay.
Do you offer services? Just this is a question I don't know. Do you offer services to the family after the loved one has passed on? Is
Yes.
there continue? Okay, so what does that look like?
Uh, I have several ways I offer support. A daily email that comes with a quote, encouragement,
Hmm.
newsletters, um, grief support groups, one-to-one individual coaching, and group coaching for is similar. When people hear bereavement support groups, generally they think of one way of being supported, everyone in a room. I also, and so I do some that are similar to that, but then grief coaching groups that um, bring the tools of coaching to that, right?
Right,
And you think of the difference of coaching and um, mental health counseling.
right.
I sort of see it the same way, that there's a difference between the traditional grief support group and a coaching grief
Mm,
support group.
yeah, yeah. And there is some healing in that. I mean, I've done both. I've done group and I've also done one-on-one. And like I said earlier, I spent a year with Sharon,
Mm.
and I don't know. It was monumental. Anything you want to add or say? Anything in the miscellaneous area that we could possibly have missed?
I don't think we missed anything. It's an honor to speak with you, to meet you, and to share this information with people. And I
Mm,
encourage folks to not be afraid, but to dip
right.
their toe into those challenging conversations.
Well, this is very much a call that you have. I'd say this is definitely your calling on life, and just the ease and the gentleness of your spirit. And I'm sure that there's a feisty woman in there as well, though.
Oh, yeah.
So, if people want to reach out to you, tell us again how we find you, and then you're also going to be at the summit next week. Do you know which day you're speaking, or I don't just it's
I
Thursday,
don't
Friday,
know
and
yet.
Saturday of next week. Okay.
Yep. Yeah.
But
Uh,
again, how do we find you?
Find me at my website, coachrev.com. And I'm on Facebook under Coach Rev Funeral Officiant.
Well, I'll be
Yeah.
okay. So Coach Rev in both cases, coachrev.com, or I can find you on Facebook on Coach Rev Funeral Officiant.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much for the time. It has been an absolute pleasure, and I'm looking forward to getting a chance to visit with you again next week.
Thank
And
you.
I hope everyone got something out of this. This was an excellent interview,
Thank you.
and thank you for giving us the time. All right, have a great day.
You as well.
Okay.
Bye-bye.